Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tangent Tuesday. I'm Monty, and Yark can do the rest of the talking while I call Roy.
Hello, I guess we started. I'm drinking some coffee, which I rarely do, but today I was pretty sleepy. We are coming back with our friend Roy. He's gonna finish recounting his story of the jungle. Um, we finished last, or actually 2 weeks ago. Um,
What jungle?
Jungles of Venezuela. He finished recounting his story of his days in the indigenous village by telling us that he received one final ceremony or partook in one final ceremony, and the ceremony was different from the others because it was a piercing ceremony, he mentioned. Uh, so we'll see what he tells us about that. I would like to share the thing that he told us privately uh, in text. He said that he will be sharing the piercing ceremony part um, carefully. He'd have to share and choose his words wisely, I suppose, because the whole ceremony is sort of sacred, is from what I understood.
How about we just let him explain it?
Yeah.
All right, so I've got Roy on the phone now. Hey, Roy.
Hey, what's up, Keenan?
Oh, wait, hang on. No, I go by Monty on here, you son of a bitch.
Oh, my fault. I just outed you.
No worries. So we were talking last week about your trip to Venezuela and how you snuck across the border and then partook in all of these ceremonies. And we left off, I think, where you were talking about the piercing ceremony, which I know you said privately that you can't get into too much of the detail about. But also you had mentioned how you got your first taste of leading one of these retreats and how you now are going forward with making your own retreats a thing.
Yeah.
Where would you like to continue from? Well, I guess maybe the piercing was the last thing you mentioned, so we'll do what little of that you are able to talk about, and then continue. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So thanks for thanks for that breakdown. But yeah, I do want to clarify more of like the retreats part. But yeah, just to like kind of go back to the piercing. So as I said, I mean it's a ritual piercing. There were only two of us, again, me and another person who volunteered for this, and there wasn't a whole lot of information given out to me, and most of it, actually, the information that I've gotten and learned has all come like after the fact and through the experience. So this is partially why I say I can't say too much about it, because I'm actually still learning about it, and there isn't most of their traditions, especially this one, is all there's no literature about it. It's an oral tradition. And as it was explained to me, this was kind of like where they start. So it's effectively, this was some controversy about this, but it was explained to me as an initiation. And here's where it kind of gets tricky and where I don't want to speak too much because I might misinterpret because I'm new to this practice, and so I might say something that is actually incorrect. And I would just rather not have to answer to things or misguide people because it's something that I just was brought into. So here's the sort of short explanation of this. So the details of it, it's done using a stingray barb, two of them, with threads attached. Both of the stingray barbs are passed through the tongue with the thread attached. The general idea is detoxification and balancing of masculine and feminine energies. That's it. I think other than that, I'll kind of start to get tripped up in a lot of different ideas, and I don't want to get too lost in that. Um,
There's a lot there's a lot I would like to ask about that, but I understand that
go
you're not.
ask.
Well,
Yeah,
it just
ask.
meant more along the lines of the whole. So like the two barbs, one's for masculine energy, one's for feminine energy, or but you said you're not that well versed on all of it, so we can wait until you talk more
Yeah,
to the tribes people and when
right.
you get
Yeah,
more
and you see, that's
information.
a good point already, and it's a good observation. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that is, the case with the two barbs. If one represents masculine, the other represents a feminine energy. It's something like, even from like a research perspective, it's something like incomplete research. Like I haven't been able to return or had the time to ask these questions. So it's really, you know, it's really just early on, and it's yeah, as I said, it's just I haven't really had the time to kind of look into this further and ask those questions.
Well, then I guess a follow up would be: do you plan to return, and when would you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to return. I'm thinking hopefully at the end of this year, actually, if not early 2025. There's a number of things that I'd like to assist with. They have projects and things. It's basically, expansion and growth. Um, there's a potential to create I guess you'd call it another village, another center, spiritual center. So I'd like to be part of that process of, building and just like acquiring this new land out there, which would actually be on the Colombian side of the border. So that's the big plan. And then, of course, there's all sorts of little plans in there, little things. Again, as I mentioned before, it's partially humanitarian aid that the involvement that the group of Polish people were doing, and so it's just a continuation of that, of just providing the aid, and actually, if we could say social, economic, and community development. So that's the goal.
Cool. Well, I mean, it was good to hear that the development that you'd be doing down there would be on the Colombian side of the border, since this way you won't have to sneak across it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So it'd be much better for myself and from anyone coming from the United States.
Now, speaking of getting across the border into Venezuela from Colombia, what was the trip back to Colombia from Venezuela like? How did you achieve that?
So yeah, that one was much more James Bond escape like. um,
How
so
so?
this was after the ceremony of the piercing, and the following day, actually, I had already agreed that I would be going to the island while the rest of the group would be going to a sacred mountain, and that it was the agreement. I thought that I'd be getting up at a regular time, like 9 a.m., and going. But no, I was awoken with my hammock, and I was already told to have my bags packed, and so my bags were ready. But I was awoken about 5 a.m. and just kind of tapped on the shoulder and said, "Hey, it's time to go." And I'm like, "Oh man, here we go." So I quickly got my shoes on. Darius is asking me questions, and I'm like, "Look, Darius, I got my head on straight. I'm doing this. I know it's kind of like it's a big thing to break away from the group, but I want to do this. This is part of my personal experience." And so he quickly was like, "Okay, I got it. I understand." So he walked away. I went outside with my guide who'd be leading me across. We quickly, there was a motorcycle waiting, and so very quickly with my bags and all, he and his wife in front of me. So I'm the third person on the back of this motorcycle with my bags. Now we're just quickly leaving the village down, like a jungle path. And so I was like, having this moment where I'm like looking around, I'm like seeing the headlight reflect off the trees and everything. And I'm like, wow, this is insane. I'm like just driving in the middle of, the sun hasn't even risen yet, through the jungle on my way to leave Venezuela. And the driver, he says, actually, there's this thing called jungle fever. And I'm like, okay. the moment that he said that, the rear tire lost traction. And so we're going down. I know this. I'm like, oh man, we're going down. So we fell over to the right side. It was like boom, hit the ground pretty hard, but it was pretty soft and muddy and that sort of thing. And the driver was kind of, of course, he was shook up. It seemed like the motorcycle fell on top of him, so we got it off, and it was just like a kind of like, okay, dust yourself off. We got to keep moving, and which we did. This kind of later on came into play with like, I didn't realize at the time. It took a few days, but like, was actually getting vertigo from I believe from that fall off the motorcycle. My neck. I didn't realize. I guess the adrenaline carried me really far. So anyhow, we transferred once we get out of sort of the jungle area back into town. We stopped at another house. I guess dare to say it's a safe house where we get off that motorcycle. We talk for a second, have some coffee, and then transfer motorcycles. I get on a motorcycle with a different driver as the guide, and his wife are on their motorcycle, and now we're heading to the port. It's sort of a hidden port. We go through the town and find other people waiting for us. It seems like a house with like a sort of back entrance to the river. We head down there. It's still nighttime, and we get on a boat. The engine starts, and we're kind of just waiting. I'm like, oh, God, dang, we made it to the river. I felt immediately like better. But the guide was like, hey, yeah, we're not done yet. We're still in Venezuela. And I remember looking up at the moon. It just looked really amazing to me. And slowly but surely, the boat started moving, and we sort of passed the brightly lit immigration checkpoint from the distance. And at that point, when you're in the middle of the water, they don't know whether you're coming or going, or so you're just another boat in the water. Yeah, and maybe a 20-minute boat ride over to the island, which I called the outpost. I was dropped off there, and that began like the second major phase of the journey.
How big was this island?
It was huge. I thought it was actually small, but it's actually huge. I don't know the exact size, but
you could get lost wandering around in there?
Absolutely, yeah. I kind of did that.
I was about to ask, did you?
Yeah, so it was, it's like a Havana beach, sand. I thought, I thought it was quite small. And in the back, there's like these trails that the cattle make, and then it's jungle. I didn't realize. I thought it was small, and but it's actually pure jungle. And this was after like 3 or 4 days. I just kind of wandered off into the jungle. It was, that was the whole thing. But eventually, I was never far from the river. But let's just say that north-south, the island is huge. East-west, it's not very large. So what you have is like to the east and to the west, you have the river. It's the same river actually, except to the east is Venezuela, to the west is Colombia. And I was kind of aware of this whole time, so I didn't feel lost, but I was definitely in deep, and it took me hours to get back to the outpost because the jungle was so thick, and yeah, so I don't recommend anyone wander off like I did, but I did because I was curious.
All right, so then what happened next after you found your way back to the outpost?
Well, as I say, I was the Spanish word is regañar. Abuelo. At this point, I'm staying with Abuelo. Has arrived already in Abuela, and then his son and his son's partner, as well as niece that they're caring for. So it's really just them 5 and myself, the 6 of us. It was very intimate. So when I get back, they were like searching for me. And in fact, when I hit the river, Abuelo was going up and down the river actually looking for me. So he was actually very accepting. But he also was like made it clear that like that I'd made a huge mistake and that
Wandering
shouldn't.
off like that.
Yes, and this was after already a few days on the island, so lots of things had already happened. Um, I had already been given what's called mopacho, or tobacco, blessed tobacco. Um, Tabaco rezada just means it's blessed. It's prayed over many years, and so I'd been given this tobacco, which is sort of the core or the beginning of what would be an altar. So when I say that I can do certain things, maybe I wouldn't necessarily say ceremony, but cleansings and that sort of things. It's through the medium of this blessed tobacco, which had been given me, and so as like part of my like training and like, hey, look, don't do that. Abuelo took away this tobacco from me because I was actually using it in the jungle as a way to orientate myself and to ward off, the bad kind of energies. And certainly he's like, it wasn't for that. I didn't give it to you so you can go, you know, out in the jungle and, get almost, essentially die. That was his thing. It was like, you could have died out there. There's jaguars. There's lots of things that you don't know about. But he was also kind of like impressed and kind of saying like, good job. But he was also saying, you messed up. You could, you definitely messed up. And you should have had, some more confidence and some more communication. But, it was sort of like well, I'm impressed, but also like, you should be doing things different, like be more responsible, kind of thing. And
kind of like, good job, idiot. You shouldn't have done that, but I'm proud of you.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was sort of like a training, like a real world course of like, hey, I can go out there and like survive and, like be okay, and but it was definitely a huge lesson. And actually abuela, it was she was very worried. Everyone was actually very worried that I was gone.
Yeah, how long were you wandering around, separated from the group for?
Dude, it was about 7 hours.
Holy shit.
So at this point in time, again, this is like we're getting like into the later parts of the stay on the island when I was quite honestly like already losing my mind, and I'll kind of explain why, after I just finished this part. But
Okay.
I was becoming so desperate to return to the United States or to reunite with the Polish people that I was actually looking for a way to escape. And in this sort of like madness mindset, I thought that I could, that I would just walk to Colombia and find myself, back on the other side, and I would make my way to the U.S. Embassy, which is a crazy idea.
Yeah, did you have any food or water with you when you enacted this crazy idea?
Wait, what? Wait, so that day you just woke up and you're like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna try to escape."
I was like, I'm gonna go to the. And I was more like scouting, but in my head, I'm scouting for a way to make it to the U.S. Embassy in Bogota.
He was on a reconnoiter.
So I had 1 liter of water with me.
Wow, just 1 liter.
Just 1 liter, and
Nope.
I figured that I brought a cup with me, and I figured I would just reach the river and get water out the river.
It sounds like a good way to get parasites.
There's a way to get it off, like the cream de la crop off the top of the river, where it's pretty clean.
Okay. You can always boil it and build a fire.
Yeah, but let me back up a bit to how did I get to this mindset?
Yeah, you had said you were on the island, and this was after a couple of days being on the island, separated from the rest of the group?
Yeah, we're talking, this is probably day 4 already.
Day 4 after the piercing.
After arriving on the island, yeah.
Okay.
So the first, let's just say the day that I arrived and the first 2 days, quite normal. I was just getting to know them. And Abuelo actually hadn't arrived yet with Abuelo. So it was actually just me, Abuelo's son, and his partner, and the niece that they cared for. So it was it was kind of a period of recovery for me because I just left, Venezuela with intense, ceremonies and things that were going on. So I was recovering, and I was just taking it easy for the most part.
Until you decided to go on a 7-hour hike through the jungle.
Right, and so even before that, after I believe Abuelo arrived, it was about day 3. And I knew that, so the whole time I'm being prepared by his son to be like, look, Abuelo's coming and you're going to have a chance to speak with him again, like in a much more private setting. So it was kind of like giving me all like a lot of oral history and things, and just kind of like, look, you got to ask the right questions and like know what you want and what you're going to ask him. Because it's kind of like, it's funny, like a lot of it is I compare to movies, but it's sort of like, having a chance to speak with the Godfather. And so they're like, he's just like, look, think about what you're going to say and this and that. So I was really hyped up and nervous that Abuelo was coming, which I realized later was not even necessary, because Abuelo he's a very accepting person and just wants to know. Let's just say I did prepare and I did have some questions, but there were things that I kind of felt bad for. I kind of erred in the way that I asked the question. It came off as rude of what I was asking. I was actually asking for too much, too soon. This caused my mind to be like going to like a really old guilt kind of thing, and it may or may not be related to what I did the next day, which I decided to fast. Something told me like start fasting, like now, like stop eating. And this was a couple of days before Ramadan, so it actually became like a funny coincidence.
Who knew the jungles of Venezuela / Colombia would convert you to Islam?
Yeah. In my mind, so you all have heard of Vision Quest?
Yeah, I have. Yarick has not. You're Roy.
The Native American thing, where you like get thrown in the forest and you have a vision quest.
Vision Quest.
Peyote.
It's something like that.
Okay.
So I basically began my own vision quest because I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm kind of like, I wanted to have a deeper understanding of like, what it's all about. Like what, this vision, what is this vision that people talk about? So based off what I read and had heard about Vision Quest, my understanding of Vision Quest is that, yeah, you're somewhere in a mountain or a jungle, and but you're limited to water, maybe about a liter or 2 of water per day, and you're not eating anything else. So this is what I did, and it wasn't till about day 2 or 3 that they realized that, look, man, we know you're not eating. Like, why didn't you tell us? Like, and I didn't know. I had no answer. I was just like, I had just begun this vision quest on the island without telling anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, it might look a little bit alarming if nobody knows what's
like,
happening.
This motherfucker's crazy.
Crazy guy, this crazy American starving himself. What the fuck did we do to him?
So, but once they knew what it's about because they have an understanding of Vision Quest, right?
So once you had told them that is what your intention for not eating was, they kind of were like, oh, okay, we're not concerned for you anymore.
Yeah, but they're also just like, you could have told us,
Yeah.
So let me just say this. That was the strongest medicine. The strongest psychedelic that I experienced was the psychedelic of not eating.
Yeah, I've in my own reading on psychedelics and psychedelic experiences, often I come across things that suggest that putting one's body and mind through an extreme state is in itself psychedelic, like fasting, for example, or restricting breathing, or over breathing. All of these sort of external hacks on our nervous system can produce psychedelic experiences even without any psychedelic compounds.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't know what it is internally that our body produces, but I was definitely having strong visual and auditory hallucinations, visions. Um,
Did
and
you
so,
did
like,
you I don't mean this in any way glibly, but did you discover what your spirit animal is?
um, there is, yes, there's a story about a spirit animal, and there's this, um, and I definitely attempted to tap into one of them, and this was, so I'll explain it this way. So, Abuelo, his father, so great grandfather of the Pieroa, they said that his animal was the deer, and that he would transform into a deer to travel long distances, and this was kind of like his spiritual avatar. Um, I definitely tried to tap into this deer, and I think that I actually did. This deer energy. Um, and in more of like using meditation and using sort of almost yogic like practices to understand and feel in my body what it is, what is the energy of a deer. um, there are deer there natively near, interestingly enough, in on the Colombian side we saw deer. So again, this is very near the Amazon. So the reason why the deer is so special, because all from Alaska to South America, there are deer. And they can travel these great distances, amazing distances. Of course, they're like predators and all sorts of things, but one deer can travel so far. Um, and this was the energy I was trying to tap into, like saying, "Well, yeah, I could do it. No big deal. I'll walk to Bogota." um,
Oh, that's what you mean by that's the energy you're tapping into. You're like, I will find the deer within me and I will walk through the jungle to Bogota and surrender to
yeah.
the American embassy.
Yes. So let's just say, so like now I'm deep in, I'm 2 days, no eating, very little water. So I feel invincible. I feel forget about it. I don't need food. All I need, just give me a bucket and I'll collect rainwater and I'll be good. Like I'm, you know what I mean?
You
This
went you
was
went
like,
full commando, dude.
dude, I did.
Crazy commando, though, because I'm pretty sure commandos still eat.
So yeah, I don't know. I went full, like, whatever you want to call it, like just full crazy. Um, so the one night where I like had the strongest, after like 2 days, it was like up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. No one else is up. I'm staring at the stars. I'm looking at the stars, and I'm seeing like there's like a river in the sky, and like it seems like an arrow pointing me like down the direction of the river, of like, oh, go this way. And I started to realize, okay, look, north, south. Look, I have one, there's some type of glowing cloud in the south, and there's another glowing cloud in the north. Like these two, seems like two, it's kind of like signaling me home. And so what I felt was, and I later told this to a brother, and he's like, yeah, dude, yes. Like, but also you're fucking nuts. But Um, so I have a really good friend in the north of Ecuador, and this is like a home for me. And so from where I was to the south is Ecuador, and this is like, okay, this is a safe haven for me. So in the sky, I'm seeing, and through this vision, that there's a home for me in Ecuador in the south. And there's also a home for me in the north, in Chicago, in Denver. So I have this like feeling of like, okay, one way I can get out of here is, I'm like, I could just get on a boat. I'll just take a canoe and I'll freaking go down river to Ecuador. and and then I'll meet up with my friend, and then like everything will be all good. So this was like the two lines of thinking, and I'm like, okay, I can either walk to Bogota or I can get on a boat, a little canoe, and roll myself down to Ecuador.
Hold on. Hold on, Roy. I'm very confused. Why were you thinking like this?
Uh,
Okay,
extreme body stuff does extreme stuff to the mind.
No, okay. So
yeah, no, but it's a good question. So
It
I'll
is.
explain. So I believed that my life was in danger.
Okay.
While you were on the island, or
Yes.
in Venezuela?
On the island.
Okay.
So from the island, Venezuela, the port is visible. You can see the lights. They're blasting music.
Right, and
lights are-
and this is like the immigration port where like customs is.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So my phone, and I also had a work phone with me that I was like, kind of balancing with that one too. I needed it, like having two phones is like a resource. But my phone was connecting on the cell tower pings in Venezuela. And this was like freaking me out. For one, I got a strange message from a number that asked me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." And in my head, in my whatever my thinking was this is the U.S. Embassy texting me because they realized that there is an American in Venezuela because his cell phone is pinging off the towers there. And I text them, "Okay, I'm okay," but I never got a response. And it was just a weird, strange number that texted me, "Are you okay?" From that point, I was having auditory hallucinations. I don't know if this is a reality, but the music that they were blasting from the side of Venezuela contained lyrics which were mentioning our group and me, and were identifying us and blasting this out loud in the speaker, saying, "Oh, we're, these, it was like a song, so this is like the crazy hallucination auditory, again, to me, it was perceived as reality, but from what I hear blasting out these speakers from Venezuela is specific names of us, and actually not my name, but I understood that I was sort of, I had nicknames, let's just say that. So I identified myself, and they identified me using a nickname, which I was like, "Oh yeah, that's me." And I would hear it being blasted out the speaker. And so I believe that the Venezuelan government was hunting me.
Some like Guantanamo Bay psyops shit.
Yes, and this was also because people were telling me, like I would hear this in like when I was more like cognizant of what was going on. Like people were telling me, "Oh, Maduro, this guy Maduro, the president, that he really wants to capture an American," And so like this thought was in my head that like, okay, this guy Maduro, he wants an American. He's like, he really wants to capture.
Wait, who told you that?
People in Venezuela.
Yeah, Venezuelans probably know that Maduro is going after us Americans.
What if it's just like a boogeyman story? To scare you.
Yeah,
Boogeyman story to keep Americans out of Venezuela.
Right. I mean, you could look up the U.S. Embassy, the page, and like what what the travel advisory is for Venezuela.
Don't go there.
It's level 4. It says do not go. And it's that anybody traveling, especially in the Colombian-Venezuela border region, is at risk of being captured and detained. Like without either being detained and charged with treason against the Venezuelan government, or just being detained indefinitely. So this is on my mind, right? And then, like I said, now I'm in this vision quest having these hallucinations. So I believe that I was being hunted. And so this was starting this like freaking like thing of like, I need to get out of here. I need to escape. And I was just growing desperate. I was growing desperate. I was going mad. I was not eating. I wasn't actually not even not eating. I was also not sleeping.
Oh my gosh, dude.
So I was up. Had been up for about 3 days straight. Very little sleep. So I was literally going mad. And I was having all these ideas about like how could I get out, what type of disguise could I use. I was actually going to go. One of my thought was that I would go to Ecuador disguised as an indigenous person from the north of Mexico, and that if I was caught by Venezuelan authorities or anybody, I would say that, oh, I'm a Mexican indigenous person from Nayarit, but my mom made me study in the United States. That's why I know English, and I'm out here on the vision quest. Because if one thing that actually the Venezuelan government does respect is the indigenous people. Indigenous people do not need passports. They don't need special permissions. If you are, I guess, identifiable or proclaim that you are an indigenous person, you can enter and exit Venezuela without any documents. Because you're an indigenous person. So this was going to be my disguise, and be like, oh yes, I'm I'm an indigenous person from Mexico, and I came here for a vision quest, and I'm just a little lost.
That's such a crazy story.
I'm just a little lost and starved, and
Yeah.
The fucking border region, like by the river, like dude, they weren't gonna believe
Yeah.
me. Dude.
By the way, I just looked up on the travel.state.gov list of level 4 do not travels. And Venezuela is in the likes of places like Sudan, Ukraine, Libya, Syria, North Korea, Belarus, Haiti, Burkina Faso. Oof.
Yep. Iran.
Yeah, Iran, Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq, Russia, South Sudan, Somalia, Mali, Burma, and there was one more. Hang on, where's that last one? And the Central African Republic.
Car.
Yes. So it's in this category. According to Darius, some of this is just propaganda. But for whatever it's worth, I mean, people there on the ground do talk about, like Maduro wanting to capture Americans.
I mean, I think I imagine, because as far as I'm aware, Maduro and Putin are relatively close when it comes to Russian aid and backing to Venezuela, and so given how many Americans that Russia's decided to imprison for trades, I imagine Maduro would actually probably want to follow that same playbook.
I mean, they just hate American capitalist or whatever propaganda they say over there.
Right. Yeah, it's essentially capitalism versus communist socialism.
God, they still
that was
make those?
What was that?
They still make communists?
Yeah, that's why there's a whole embargo on Venezuela.
And Cuba, right.
Yeah. And, to a lesser extent.
Wait. Hold on a second, Roy. I'm still confused about how quickly you came to this state. So, like, you were, like, in this state, like, of anxiety and, like, anguish the whole time you were on the island?
No, the first 2 days was like a paradise. Like I said, I was just relaxing. All of this only happened after Abuelo arrived and after, put it this way, after I realized that that I would not be having let's just say the gift of Yopo from Abuelo.
Okay.
My mind perceived this as like as a punishment, as a negative thing, whereas like it was actually just a natural thing.
And so then, as a result of you perceiving it as such, you decided to go on this what do you call it, vision quest with the food and water restriction, and sleep deprivation. Jesus Christ, you really did a number to yourself.
But wait, so Abuelo came. You said the third day, and you guys talked, and he said you're not getting any more medicine.
He didn't say it like that, but he just. Yeah, it was. We talked for hours. Like I said, we talked for hours, and basically the goal was for him to know. First, I was actually approaching it from like this like Western formal perspective, and he was like, you know what? At a certain point, he's like, honestly, I don't know you. Like, he's like, you think you can? Like, he's like, let me tell you this. You've gone further than anyone from the group. That came with you. And I think he was meaning further than most people that have gone within the time frame that I was there. He's like, I'll give you that. You've gone further, you've gone pretty far. But settle down. You're not going to go that far. You're not going to come here and then all of a sudden, like now you have, the blessing, the Yopo medicine that you can take back to the United States. He's like, no, that's not going to happen. But what I will say is, here's your tobacco, and I have to know who are you? Tell me why are you even here? He's like, I don't even know that. What is even the reason that you've come this far? And this is where like now it's getting just personal. Now it's like, okay, now I'm actually telling them the story of what drove me to be there in the first place.
Okay.
And this was actually a beautiful experience. It was like a huge release for me.
Yeah.
It was a cathartic experience that I had.
Yeah.
But after that, he was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It totally makes sense. I get it. I understand why you're here. Nonetheless, I can't give you the medicine. And he kind of like, telling me like, yeah, it's kind of arrogant that you would think that you would come here and get Yopo so quickly. But he's like, but just chill. You're good. Don't worry about it. Don't, like he wasn't being, what I realized, he wasn't being harsh. He was just being truthful. I was the one being harsh on myself. So
it's a nice distinction between harsh and truthful.
Right, but it was, I was the one punishing myself. He wasn't punishing me. I was the one like, boom, I'm going to do this now to prove it myself.
You've already done Yopo, right? At the village.
Yes, but I'm talking about Yopo given to me in a large quantity or a significant quantity, enough so that I can return to the United States and give and share with other people.
Oh, okay. That kind of gift of Yopo, rather than the experience of Yopo and the ritual, but the ability to then take the ritual out of the country.
Right. Yeah. No. Yopo. He would have gave me the Yopo. We would have done Yopo for sure. But I'm talking about, like I said, an altar. They refer to as an altar. So for me to receive an altar means that now I can do a ceremony with Yopo.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So yeah. I mean, after this experience, it was great. It was to have it with him, but for whatever reason, internally now it just caused me to like want to prove myself. This is where it starts to get into like just the whole personal consciousness of and unconscious, in that what was actually happening through every medicine ceremony, and most of us, all of our experience for people, I'll say this, quote unquote, with trauma or with something, this is actually can be the driving force to most of the decisions that you're making in life. So I was being triggered, and the triggers were actually driving my behaviors. But it's actually just a misinterpretation of what's happening, right? It's effectively what CPTSD or PTSD is. When you are triggered, is the response is a misinterpretation of what's occurring, and it's causing you to believe that you are in danger.
Yeah, I've always referred to that kind of miscommunication or misunderstanding as hearing and not listening, because when we have trauma and we are hearing someone speak, we may not be listening to what it is exactly they're saying, but instead hearing how what they're saying is making us feeling. And that's what we're really listening to when we're hearing. Instead of listening to the speaker and what their intention is and what they're saying, we're listening to what our response to what they're saying is.
Right. I mean, it's taking everything personal. It's taking everything as a personal attack. And not everything is a personal attack. Some, people just say things and people just speak. And somebody who's listening and, like myself at the time, was taking things personally, like, and it's, sometimes it just has nothing to do with you and your history, but, taking it as a personal attack. And so it's that, but it's also just that, the trigger is changing your whole physiology.
Mm-hmm.
And your whole behavior. And so you're actually feeling it. It's not that, oh, you had a thought that this would happen, but no, you're actually feeling that you are in danger, that you are, that your life is at risk.
And so then that feeling you got from what was perceived as the rejection of not being able to take the Yopo back with you to the States, you then decided to go on this fasting experience and vision quest. And during that, which lasted, you said, for about 3 days, so you were on the island for about 2 days, relaxing and chilling, and then for another 3 days after that, you were doing this fasting vision quest. What, and then it was on that third day of this fasting vision quest that you decided to go on this crazy 7-hour hike through the jungle.
Yeah.
And then from there, how much longer were you on the island? How much longer did you continue to fast? And when was it that you actually made it back into Colombia proper?
So when I came back from the hike, it was about. I knew that my deadline was midday. I knew that if I didn't make it back before noon, I was gonna be I was already in danger, but I knew I'd be in real danger because at that point the sun would be so harsh, so hot. I could just pass out from just that. So I knew when abuelo picked me up on the boat and like basically gave me this one of the hardest lessons of my life, but like gently, like very gently. He was like, and everyone was just like, you're gonna eat now, you have to eat. Like they were just like, we're gonna tell Darius, like, you're gonna make us look bad, they're like, we're not feeding you, like they're like, you have to eat now. And I'm like, yes, I'm gonna eat. I will eat. I was like totally accepting it. So they served me just like a big plate of food, like a big omelet, and I think some vegetables and potatoes and juice, everything. And then they gave me honey. Just trying to get all types of minerals, sugars, and salts into my body. And so I ate this just massive plate, and then rested. And then just very quickly after, so like my body, I realized it was going to be a long recovery, because even then, like my body just like burnt through that food. So like an hour and a half later, it didn't seem like long. They were like, eat more, here's some more food, come, like you need to eat. And I'm like, yeah, I'm actually like, I'm hungry still. So I had another huge, like not huge, but like a significant meal, just maybe just a couple hours at most after the first meal. And so I'm slowly recovering, but I needed to do a lot of things to recover. I needed lots of water, like sugars, food, proteins. I also needed sleep, so that was the other part of the recovery. So I was trying to sleep, I was taking naps, and then finally, this is where I started. The group, they were going to be arriving the next day at nighttime. So at first I thought, okay, maybe they arrive at even, but they're like, no, they probably won't be here till like 10 p.m., like pretty late at night. So I basically have a day and a half to kind of prepare for their arrival and just kind of recover a little bit. I thought it was plenty of time, but actually it was not enough time to completely recover. I slept, slept during the day when I initially got back, and I was super sore. My body was aching. I'd lost so much weight, but I also it seemed like I gained so much muscle because I just went on this 7-hour hike through the jungle. But anyhow, at night, this is where where we had a meal, and this was refuted by some people who were like, no, this did not happen, but I know this happened. Where I say that this was like the ceremonial lesson of teaching how to serve in ceremony, namely dada. It's the same function whether it's food or if it's a drink. So that night we had a dinner, and I would be in charge. I was in charge of serving, serving people, the water, the drink, and the food, and inviting, And so we did this in the same way that we would do Dada. There's an order, there's a procedure, it begins to your left, blah, blah, blah. You sort of pray or give some type of prayer to what you're offering, the water, the food, and like I said, you follow the order. So we did that, and then it was like, all right, rest up, eat your food, hydrate, and go to sleep. You got to rest. So immediately after that, sort of for me, ceremonial meal, special meal. We all kind of went to bed, and then something told me to sing, to chant as they do, and I chanted, and they listened to me chant, and it seemed like it encouraged me. And then I fell asleep for a couple hours, and so that's just like my body was so accustomed to not sleeping. It's so hard to sleep. It was actually like the most I could sleep. I would sleep for an hour, wake up, sleep for another hour, wake up. So I would continually have to go back to sleep because my body was not used to sleeping long hours. So I did get some sleep, but it was so interrupted that I didn't nearly get nowhere near 8 hours, maybe 3 hours.
It sounds also like you didn't even have much time to enter the deep REM sleep.
No, yeah. So it was just these quick 1 hour naps, and then it was the next day, and and the group would be arriving that night, and so still recovering. Went through the motions, had breakfast, and then it was like, yeah, get ready because Abuelo's going to take you to town, and you're going to you're going to run some errands, you're going to get your things that you need, your food, your sugars, your whatever juice that you need, and yeah. And so even then it was like, okay, I'm still recovering, but brother was like, I feel like this was another lesson. He was teaching me like, look, you're fine. You need to, feel safe again. Like you're fine, you're safe. Like it's only internally that you feel not safe. And if there are risks or little dangers like pickpocketers and that sort of thing, pay them no mind or pay them attention, but like, it's nothing to be too, crazy about. Like, they're really just looking for you to not, to like be distracted and then like snatch your bag or whatever. So I felt like this was him, like taking me to town, making purchases. We bought water and, some like kind of Gatorade things and things like that. And we're bringing them back. And, it seemed like there were people like who just were mainly men who were just mainly interested in like trying to pickpocket. And so he was showing me how like those people are really just kind of cowardice. They're cowards. So as long as you are aware and you can see them, then there's nothing to be worried about. And yeah, so we did this whole thing. Of course, it took some time. Crossing the river, getting the things, going around town, coming back. Come back, and then start preparing another meal. This all took time, and then we're preparing for the group's arrival. Kind of cleaning up, tidying up things, and yeah, still in recovery. But the group eventually does arrive at dark, and there's like a meeting, and then all sorts of things, and like. People like they already know like something like, man, you changed. Like it's just been like a week, but it's like you're like a different person. You're like a Pioroa now. You're like one of them. And I'm like, yeah, this was what I was feeling. Like, cause I mentioned this I think in the last time we talked, but I was losing my Western mind. My Western mind was shrinking, and my sort of learning to think and do like a Pioroa person, had increased. And so, I was just behaving differently. I looked different. I'd lost weight. And so it was like quite clear that something had gone on. And it was like, what the heck happened to this guy? So it's like I couldn't really hide it. And so I tried to explain it in like the lens of like, look, it's Ramadan and I'm fasting.
So it's just you're talking about how much weight you lost while you were because of doing that hike and the fasting and everything. It just reminded me of like fuck, I don't know, 6 years ago or something like that. I went on a little birthday trip to Colorado and up in the mountains near Rocky Mountain National Park, where me and my friends did a pair of 10-hour hikes. No, we didn't intend it to be 10-hour hikes, but it turned into 10-hour hikes because we couldn't read maps, and the maps didn't have legends of distances on them. And I remember at the end of it, like weighing myself when I got back from this trip and being like, oh shit, I lost like 15 pounds just walking around up in the mountains.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast and how much weight you can lose just by just walking for so long.
Yeah, especially
So
at altitude where you're using more oxygen. But I don't know if that would apply. I think you probably did it worse with the whole what do you call it? The fasting that you did on top of the hike. I mean,
right, and it's also like a natural sauna, like
yeah, I mean,
temperature
yeah. Well, how
over
hot? You said over 100?
over 100 degrees with extremely high humidity. So like the
Ooh.
feels has got to be like 110. What the feels like. But yeah, over 100 degrees in midday, and extremely high humidity. So you're just losing a lot of fluids, just standing there. So yeah, that was my explanation, but most people weren't kind of buying it. I was like, but I'm like, but at this point, I'm just so weak, I can barely like keep a conversation, and I'm just like Ramadan, Ramadan.
Why did you feel like you needed to like come up with a story?
I didn't want to tell people that I had wandered off in the jungle and that I could have died. Apparently, that was the big thing.
You were almost like you were trying to protect them from worrying about what you were experiencing.
Yes, I didn't want them to think like, oh yeah, this is
This
the
motherfucker's crazy.
yeah. I was like, I was trying to normalize it slightly and just be like, yeah, Ramadan.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about that is because it took so long for it was hard for me to eat and hard for me to sleep. So actually adopting for the next few days, the way that I ate was the way that a Muslim would eat during Ramadan. I was eating before the sun came up, and then when the sun went down at night. That was actually the easiest thing for me to do. Because I couldn't just I couldn't just go back to breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. I couldn't do it. My body couldn't keep up with that. I would have a spoonful, and then I'd be like, oh, I'm full. I can't eat.
Yeah, I mean, that many days without food and only a little bit of water will definitely shrink your stomach.
Yeah. So I couldn't do it, and I think it works slightly in the sense of like, look, Ramadan started on Monday, and I just got a head start. That was my explanation. I'm like, Ramadan started Monday, and I started on fucking Friday.
I have a quick question about that, but also I just have to say I need to get going here in about a minute or two. But would you like to pick this up again for the next episode?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Awesome. That question I have though is that how long did it take you if you have resumed your normal eating habits from before you went on this trip? How long did it take you to resume that habit?
So it definitely happened while I was in Colorado. I mean, even like going back to Bogota and the day that I was there, like I said, I was at that point I was like, okay, Ramadan. It just makes sense. It's Ramadan. I know a little bit from Sunni Muslims. I had a really good Sunni Muslim friend, so I was like, this is what I'm doing. But yeah, it was sometime, I guess, so I got back, let's say, the 18th, Monday the 18th was when I was scheduled to be back at work. And even then, it was quite clear, even with conversations with my coworkers, I definitely shared, huge parts of the trip with them just because there was no way that I could actually hide it because I was still in recovery. I would say probably the days after that, March 19th to March 20th. And I had already been back in the U.S. since like I think the 16th to the 17th. So it was a good handful of days after already being in the United States that I started to return to some level of normalcy, and I was still struggling the whole entire first week. Even on to the second week, I was struggling to sleep. I was not able to sleep more than an hour or two. I would fall asleep thinking I was asleep for like hours, and I would realize it had only been 20 minutes or it had only been 1 hour. And that took about a week or two. And it's slowly getting better. But there's just a sense of feeling that like that I don't know, I'm not sure that I could ever. I think one time in the last 3-4 weeks I've slept 8 hours. So there's a kind of a bit of a sense that I'm not sure that I could ever sleep 8 hours again.
I'm sure you can, dude.
Maybe, but a certain part of me, just through like the different kind of projects that I want to advance, you kind of hear this about really people who are like the Elon Musk of the world, people who are highly involved in projects and things that they want to advance.
Yeah, they don't sleep that much.
They're not sleeping that much.
I mean,
so
just think about Trump tweeting at 4:50 in the morning. That guy does not sleep, and he's trying to do a lot.
So yeah, I mean, there's kind of a sensation. I have one official job, but like I said, I have a couple of different projects that I'm working on.
It's interesting too what you said about sleep. It made me think of this. I think it was this little speech or a clip of a speech that Arnold Schwarzenegger was giving, where he was talking about 8 hours of sleep. You don't need 8 hours of sleep. 6 is fine. Then be doing stuff between 6 a.m. and midnight, and then sleep midnight to 6 a.m.
I saw a thing that said that guys need less sleep than girls, about like 2 hours less. But anyway,
we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah.
But so yeah, you said you've got a couple of other projects outside of work that you're doing. I'd love to talk to you about those on the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely do it next week.
All right, sounds good. Well, you have a good rest of your day, Duder, and thank you for telling us about that. I'm happy to hear that you had such a profound and rewarding experience on your trip to Venezuela.
Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot. It was definitely that, and I just appreciate you inviting me, on the podcast and the interest that you guys show. So for sure.
Also, congratulations for not dying or being kidnapped by the Venezuelan government.
Thank you.
All right.
Man.
Yeah, I'll see y'all next time.
Talk to you next time, dude. Have a good night.
Bye.
Or day. Shit. Whatever day it is.
Bye.
All right. That was Roy again.
Yeah.
Good talk.
Good talk. I
Pretty
was
fucking crazy.
I was confused a little bit in the center part.
Yeah, I'm glad we clarified up like how long he was on the island for, separated from the group, because at first it did come off like he had just arrived there and decided to go. I'm gonna go wandering into the jungle straight off the bat.
Yeah, I think I don't know, man. I can't put myself in his shoes, so I can't really try to comprehend what he was going through. But I don't think I would have tried to make my way on foot to Ecuador.
Well, he was going to go on boat to Ecuador. He was going to go on foot to Bogota. He's what? Roy's what? Mexican American, and you're Ecuadorian American. So like you two, you both speak Spanish. You're brown. You could get away with. You could get away with pretending to be an indigenous person of the Americas.
What do you mean pretending? There. I am.
Okay, you know what I fucking mean. You're not an actual part of those tribes, though. Meanwhile, there's no fucking way I can. My pasty ass skin.
From Ecuador, from Quechua, I could be like I'm Quechua.
Yeah, I guess.
You just said that the Venezuelans like all indigenous people.
Yeah, that's why he said he was considering, pretending he was one of the.
They would have not believed him.
No, he's way too Americanized. So are you, by the way.
I could get away with it.
All right. That's enough for today. We'll return in a couple of weeks with the next conversation with Roy.
Yeah, hopefully next week, if not the week after that.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.